what we do is just kind of learn from each other and talk about how we handle things, and you can kind of pick and choose and make things your own. So we kind of leave this intentionally unstructured so that we can address your issues, not necessarily anything that I want to, put off on any of you. Morning, Barb.
Morning.
How's it going? Another week. We're almost to the middle of July already. Doesn't that just make you want to gag? I can't believe it. Pretty soon it's going to be Christmas. They'll shoot me. So, Lee, you with us, bud? Can you hear? You can unmute yourself if you want.
I am here loud and clear.
Yeah. Just so you guys know, this is Lee Greenbaum. He's one of our newer recruits. He's coming to us from John L. Scott primarily. He did spend a little bit of a stint with Keller Williams, and he joined us a couple weeks ago, I guess. And we're going to make this guy successful, but he's got some questions too. So anybody want to start out with an issue just for Barb and TJ? Lee is the one that I was referring last week in terms of buyer's agency agreement and how to handle that kind of a scenario, but so we can go on that as well. TJ, what do you got, man?
I would love to have his input with the buyer agency stuff, so we can better utilize our time, not waste our time with people who aren't serious.
You know what? I totally agree. When I was with Keller Williams, we were taught, it's different now. We were saying, oh no, and that would steer away the buyer agency agreement. Well, that's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to steer away your buyer away from you closing the deal. Right now in this day and age, I know of plenty of friends that have worked their asses off, and then if you right when they're about to go, they jump to another broker and close the deal with that broker. So buyer's agency, it might be a little difficult to get signed, but it's a necessary tool to guarantee that buyer will stay loyal to you.
Did they do any teaching for you, Lee, in terms of how to approach that with your client?
What I would do, I would say I would have, and then this is what I would do regardless. This would be my script, and honestly, I said I have all my. This is nothing unusual. I don't want our buyers to feel like they're the first person to sign this document. It's gonna make it feel normal. I have all my clients, all my buyers, for their protection and my protection, sign this document saying that you'll work with me through the entire process of the transaction. Then this nonchalant, just have them sign it. This don't make it a big deal, because the minute it's a big deal or it seems out of the ordinary, they're going to be apprehensive.
Gotcha. And so, Lee, can I ask you a quick question about that?
Yeah.
So, that's all. I love that idea, saying, hey, it's for your protection and mine. But there's that section about compensation. How do you tackle that? Like, hey, if you guys flake out on me, you guys still.
The compensation where it's negotiable. That gets more stickier, doesn't it? You know what I would do? I would say, first I'd value proposition. I'm not going to come to them and ask them for a certain percentage of compensation without telling them what they're going to get out of my services. I explain to them, this is the percentage I'm asking for. This is why I'm asking for it. This is what you're going to get out of me and best choice. And this is everything I do for you during the process. So they understand that they have to understand the process and what you're going through before they understand why they're paying you a certain amount of money. So I would say, I'm going to be doing searching, I'm going to be doing showings, I'm going to be talking to other agents, all these things, especially on the listing side, all these things cost money. So you might be paying me 3%, but actually I'm taking home 1% of my family because all this other money, this is where this money is allocated to. that you're paying me in the end.
Mhm.
Have you ever, what do you think? I mean,
You know, yeah, I do like that. My thing is, with when you say, hey, you know, if you don't end up, you buy the same house that I show you, or we go through this whole process and you use another agent, and, you know, you have to pay me essentially 3% because for my hard work, you know, you're paying for my experience, you're paying for my knowledge and all these different things.
right.
And trying to get over that hump can be difficult because
It could be
there's
very
this,
difficult.
and it's a lot of buyers have this, it's not a misconception, but kind of is now that, hey, I'm a buyer, I shouldn't have to pay anything, right? The seller pays your commission and all these things, and that's all great. This is like, we have to explain to them, this is last resort in case the seller's like, hey, I'm not, you know, there's no compensation for if you bring if you bring a client over to purchase my property, because all that's negotiable now. And trying to relay that to them and showing that, hey, there's this change. No, this law is always just, I think it was just in effect last year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick.
Yep.
And so
it's true. October.
And so, yeah, October last year. So, you know, trying to explain that, and then the buyer not being, like you said, apprehensive about it, or scared off, that I'll just go to a Redfin agent who'll just show me properties all day long, you know?
Right.
And then now you have another objection to overcome.
And let me just add kind of my 2 cents to kind of structure this a little bit, how I think it should flow, so to speak. Remember, one of our criteria with every client that we have to provide the agency disclosure pamphlet. That's part of it. Where I look at this is I combine the agency disclosure pamphlet and the buyer's agency disclosure into one, because now you can take one, you can start with Washington state law requires me to disclose agency to you. And you can summarize that real quickly, but if you're a buyer's agent, that's where I'm going to spend my time. And I'm going to let them know that more often than not, the seller pays for my services for you. It shouldn't necessarily cost you anything unless due to the new laws that have just been implemented as of last October. And then I would explain how that works.
Okay.
Because not, and I say, and I think I said this last week, Rochelle actually took me to an NCAA, or NC, I'm going NCAA, I'm back in my old days now. Wow, that was like a blast from the past coming up there.
Rochelle take you to the Final Four?
Yeah, I was an athletic director in my former life, and it's like, wow, all of a sudden that's coming to the forefront. But the NWMLS has a, you know, like a quarterly meeting, and we had one, and she took me to that, and you know, they gave the statistics. You know, everybody was kind of up in arms about this and worried about it and thought it was stupid. And now our you know, we're going to lose our money and blah, blah, blah. Well, none of that really came true. And I should have wrote this down, but I'm pretty sure they said they had like 40,000 transactions. Two sellers said they weren't going to pay the buyer's agent anything. So the reality of that happening, you know, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it, but I would say, as you know, however, and if you don't, the seller does have the choice as to how much, or if any money they are going to pay toward my services to protect you, is kind of the way I say it. Now you can do this on Zoom now. You know, make your pamphlet presentation maybe a little bit more professional up in front. This, you know, we're not going to read this whole thing, but this is what they are in a synopsis kind of a view, and this is why I need you to sign this. And not to mention that state requires us to do it, but I spend a little bit of time on that. And then I do talk about the buyer's agency agreement and what it means to both of us, right? It's our agreement that you are hiring me to represent you, to show you homes, to write offers for you, all of those kinds of things. And there's what I think we were alluding to. There's that list that we have on bestchoicerealtyhomes.com, or buyer's agency. There's a list of everything we do. We can provide that at the same time, just for your information. This is what I will do for you. We're not going to go through all 200 of them, but there's quite a list of responsibilities that I am entitled to provide you as your buyer's agent, right? Typically, it doesn't cost you anything, but there's where you can lead into kind of that paragraph of compensation, because you don't want to scare them, because right away, I mean, that's is essentially what they're saying. We're having them sign is that, you know, I'm going to walk away with this at the end with 2.5 or 3% commission. Either it's going to come from the seller, or it's going to come from you. Now, you obviously don't present it that way, but that's kind of the way they're probably on the other side taking this. So you need to really massage this easily and softly to them, letting them know that, because how many of you have used the 41C in your offers when it comes down to it? Because once you have a buyer's agency agreement signed and you have an offer that you're writing, and maybe they're only paying 2%. Now they've signed, you get them to say, okay, yeah, you deserve this. This is, you know, and we'll negotiate. You could say, we can negotiate after this if we can't get the seller to actually, you know, pay up, so to speak. But if you have that buyer's agency agreement signed, that can be included in your offer along with the 41C. And that requests that the seller pays you this amount of money, let's say 3%, and you can show that the buyer's agent actually signed it, and that's what they're requesting. So it's part of the offer now. That kind of helps a little bit. So there's another incentive for them to sign this, because if that seller, for whatever reason, in the listing says, I'm only paying 2%, then now you got to have this difficult conversation with your buyer, so to speak, if you want more money, or if you're going to settle for the 2%. Again, you guys know you can do whatever you want. Rochelle she's pretty flexible with us in terms of how we want to structure our deals. But that's kind of how I lead into it. And then you talk about your fiduciary responsibilities, those kinds of things, and just kind of glance over the rest of it. But obviously that whole part about the compensation has to be dealt with, and you've got to kind of get your own kind of flow of how that's going to be when you're sitting down with your client, so that it just comes out naturally and there's no big deal. And technically there isn't really. The chances of a buyer having to pay your commission are really slim to none. Questions on that? Thoughts on that? That's where I would say kind of structuring and going. So let's kind of play off of that and see how that works.
I think you have a good point. And a client actually said this, a buyer said this to me just the other day, is I hired you to do this. So in her, without me even saying it, we'd had a conversation about compensation where I just said, this is how much the sellers are offering, and I'm okay with that. And her answer to that was at 2.5%. And I explained, you know, the whole difference, and that I, you know, could ask for more, but my choice was to go to take the 2.5%. And she said, thank you. You know, that's really nice. So I think that's a case-by-case business decision. All I'll do is back off then on what I might give them as a gift at the end. You know, what am I going to pay for as my thank you? Because it's nice to be in this position where we have more money to play with on our side as agents. But I do like the idea of couching it as them hiring you to do this. And I think it makes it a different decision from just, hey, I'm going to show you these houses, but I really want to make sure that I get paid.
Yeah. Did you utilize did you have a buyer's agency agreement with that client and use the 41C in the offer?
No. But I think that's a really good idea. And that's, I think, you know, the next offer we get to do.
I've had that happen to me a couple of times, and one of them actually was with my listing, and Windermere. I think that they just don't accept anything less than 3%. From my experience, now I could be wrong, but they do it every single time. And the guy that did it with me, he submitted it, and I presented it to my seller. And this guy, let me tell you, he's the tightest guy I've ever met in terms of wanting to keep every penny. And he signed it. He actually paid the 3%. So that buyer's agent, instead of 2.5, what we were offering in the listing, got 3% because he had a buyer's agency agreement signed, and he submitted the 41C with it, verifying that this is what my buyer and I have agreed, and this is what we're asking the seller to provide. And he did it. And I've had it happen twice now, and both times it worked. So if you're not using that, if you can figure out how you're gonna, get this buyer's agency agreement across in a way that it's beneficial for both. I mean, there's no one way to do this, and maybe we can. You don't even have to wait for these. If you've got something and you got a scenario, you want to run something by me, by all means do it. But it benefits you in another way. And let me just say real quickly too, the thing that I think we talked a little bit about briefly, but especially for you newer brokers, the other issue, let's say that this buyer, and I might have told you the story, we had a broker just recently who had a client. I mean, she busted her hump. She did video tours. She did Zoom meetings. She wrote the offer. They had one going. They had an offer signed and going in. And at the last minute, however this happened, the actual buyer decided, oh, you know what? We're going to go with another broker. Now, she had a buyer's agency agreement signed. The only thing she did wrong was she only had the husband sign. She didn't have both the husband and wife. And that became an issue. So instead of really going forward and being able to get everything, I think they settled for just under 20% would be hers. But the only reason that we could do that is because she had the buyer's agreement, and that gives Rochelle the power she needs to protect you. Now it's not just protecting buyers, because now they've kind of stepped on you. But if you've got the proper documentation as well, now Rochelle can step up and she can start having conversations and legal ones at that if she needs to. But without that, you really have stripped her of any kind of method that she can use to come back and help you get any kind of a commission out of a deal that's fallen apart like that at all. Kind of a side note, and that's not something I necessarily tell my clients, obviously, because I'm anticipating, I think like all of us, is, they trust you, we trust them, and they're going to treat us well, and blah, blah, blah. Well, we all know that doesn't always happen. And there's an instance where it didn't, and how it unfolded. So you need to make sure that when you are signing them too, make sure if it's a husband and wife, both are signing, both agree.
Yeah, I just had a similar situation where I showed a bunch of houses to a couple, didn't get the agency agreement signed, completely my fault. I just figured we created a relationship where I thought there was mutual trust, and he put a lowball offer in on a new construction, and obviously the builder's like, no. I'm like, okay. And now I haven't heard from them for about a month now. And I know they're in need of getting out of their apartment. They're well qualified and all that. So I don't even know if he's gone to the builder himself and, got a contract signed, because I just can't get a hold of him all of a sudden. So, I wish I would have gotten that buyer agency agreement signed, so that protected me, because I put in a lot of effort for that. I mean, hours and hours, and Serena too, on our team. So it's just, it was a lesson learned, and it's sometimes you have to learn the hard way with some people.
You gotta remember that it's not only the buyers, guys, it's the other agents. Not every other agent in every other company is ethical, and they may try to take, on the dark side, try to take your buyer. That agency agreement protects you not only when working with the buyer and the listing agent, but working from on the dark side of things, on the unethical side of things, other agents that might meet your buyer and get in a conversation and be a little bit hungry and try to take your buyer. So it protects you on many fronts.
Yeah, and it really becomes a pretty big discussion with this little document, if you will, in terms of protection. I'll just add too, and I would encourage you to maybe Google this. I Googled this, buyer's agency agreement and signing, and I got a couple of different scenarios, but they were saying the same message, and I'm not sure I agree with it or not. And I need to talk with Rochelle about this and see what her take is on it. But they were literally presenting the buyer's agency agreement in terms of obviously protecting the buyer. That we lean heavily on what we'll do for you, but this protects you. And the spiel is that if you agree to the buyer's agency agreement, it gives me more power to protect you. So when we're working with the sellers, because they spun it as if we don't get this, it's kind of like a consumer protection thing. If we go without a buyer's agency agreement, we're essentially at the will of the seller, and they have more power. I can't fully represent you is really the words they were saying. I can't fully represent you because I don't have your permission to be able to do the things that I want to do. So, and I listened to that, and I actually, when I had one of my mentors and I used it, I actually presented, I took some of that and I articulated how I wanted to say that. And you guys, I can be honest with you, this is no lie. He has not had one client. He's on 7 now, and every one of them has signed the buyer's agency agreement. He makes that a purpose. So it's one of those things. Now I'm going to be totally transparent with you. I don't always sign it either. But I haven't been a buyer's agent for quite some time. I primarily just do listings now. But I mean, my intent is to do that, is to be more articulate with that and to make sure that way I structure that is with the agency disclosure, I'm going to do the buyer's agency agreement, and I'm going to combine that information together. And I've kind of, I've done it once, and it was with him for him, and it worked. There was no, they just looked at us and said, "Oh yeah, I totally agree with that," and boom, it was signing without effort. So there's another kind of way to look at that, and I would encourage you maybe to maybe Google some of those kind of scripts or those kind of conversations that they were showing on the internet and see what you think about it. I mean, because I'm a big one on integrity and not lying, and I didn't think any of it was misleading or untruthful, because we don't want to. That's not the road we travel here. We don't like to do that. So. But I would encourage you to do that too, if that kind of sparks any other kind of thought process while we're discussing this as well.
That makes total sense. Why wouldn't a buyer sign that? That's a good way to approach it.
Yeah. I mean, if you kind of just structure this as here's point A, here's point B, and C, how many points you want to make on it. I mean, I wouldn't go forever on it, but when I did that, it was probably about a 10-minute conversation of just a thorough describing the buyer's agency, what that means to them, and including that buyer's agency agreement within that conversation. Because really, if you look at it, it fits. I mean, for me anyway, I think that's the most logical place. You don't want to do the buyer's agent script. Too many of us just kind of send them this and say, hey, sign this, blah, blah, blah. I don't like to do that. I like to at least have a summary. Maybe this is the teacher in me. This is the way I work. But if you're going to do it that way, and then later you're going to come to them with the buyer's agency agreement, that in and of itself could confuse them a little bit and say, well, wait a minute, we just signed this agency disclosure thing. Okay, you get what I'm saying? So you really kind of want to really be thoughtful about how we're going to present this information so that it does make sense to them. And then that way it's like a no-brainer. Oh yeah, this makes perfect sense and it fits together and I get it. And yeah, let me sign this. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would be great, since we already given the agency disclosure, the mold stuff, the wire for our alert, and then have it at the very end to kind of wrap it all up. I've never thought about it doing it that way, but I think that's what I might just do from now on. Go through those pamphlets like real quick, the ones that matter, obviously, or that are pertinent. And then we're already getting that signed per best choice anyways, and then slip in the buyer agency. This is the last form. This is something that, allows me to protect you, protect myself, and represent you fully, and, work on your behalf. And these are my fiduciary duties towards you, and X, Y, and Z. And it could sling it that way. I think that would have a better effect on people, that this guy is really working for me.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, if he wants what you can provide him, this is what we need to do. And you can either, my advice to consider anyway is maybe start with some of the ones, we have to do this because the house is built before 1978. We have to do a lead disclosure. There will be addenda we use. I do that as well. So this is just something the state requires me to give you because this is a scenario of the house that you're buying. Now we do that at the beginning. So if we do that, this is because I just do it anyway. I do it to cover everybody right away. This is just protection. We may not buy a house that's built before 1978, but in case we do, we're covered. And you don't have to worry about this, right? That kind of thing. Gives you that information. I either do the agency agreement first, and the buyer's agency together, or I will head it at the end and say, and I'm holding this one last because this one, in my opinion, is the most important. This is agency disclosure, and this is what we do. And then you can lump those together, make it seem like they're one document, and boom. Just need your signature.
Fantastic.
Just need your signature there. Anybody else got some thoughts? Barb, Willie? Hey, Willie.
I think that sounds good. I think it's always helpful, Nick, to get some, to review and get some words because we've been talking about this for so long, but it's a fairly new concept that's come up, like I said, since October, with lots of discussions and lots of seeing what the market's going to do with it. And I think it's interesting that the panic set in and then it kind of backed off, and that you aren't seeing sellers trying not to pay. It does seem to me, and somebody else would have to tell me what they think, that 2.5% is much more prevalent than it used to be. It was always pretty prevalent in Pierce County, but in King County, I'm seeing a lot of 2.5s.
Up here too in Snohomish. I think 2.5 is, I think 2.5 is becoming more the norm now than the 3%. Although if you're in Kirkland or on the east side, Bellevue, somewhere in there, I think you're still seeing a lot of the 3%, but you are seeing 2.5 sneaking in there as well. So so it just be, again, you guys get to determine, or at least try to ask for, secure yourself in terms of what is my service worth? And if you think 2.5, nobody's going to judge you on that. I mean, hey, but I say with the buyer's agency agreement, put the 3 in there because you can always negotiate down or accept something less. But especially if you're going to use that 41C and your buyer's agency agreement with an offer, why not ask for the most? Why not ask for the 3%? You may not get it, but at least you're asking for it and it's there. And your buyer says, okay, let's see if we can get you 3%. You work hard for your money, that kind of thing. So don't sell yourself short, but you've got some options to think about there too.
On a related thing, I heard from an escrow person when this first came out, that a lot of agencies didn't know that they were doing it, as they didn't fill out their CDAs properly. And so escrow was getting 2 different things, or they weren't including the buyer's agreement, so that escrow didn't know what they were supposed to do. And that's just kind of a word to all of us to make sure our paperwork's really tight so that you actually don't have that argument at closing when we all know that buyers and sellers' emotions are running kind of high anyway. It's kind of interesting. And it pops up in their face that the buyers had no idea what was going on sometimes. And I thought, well, you don't want to be the one that escrow thinks is an idiot and has an upset buyer at closing.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting.
I had a situation, I sold a house, and this is really interesting. So the lady was in a senior home. She was 86 and she wanted to buy a place for her daughter before she died. And I sold her a place and she moved into it, but she may have had dementia. She got very angry at escrow. I don't know. She was this old and she almost pulled. She signed a whole contract and we couldn't get it past her that now she's obligated to sell the house. She can't just pull the deal and decide not to sell the house. She signed a contract. With those older people. Older generation, and we're doing a buyer's agency, and we're discussing, what we're bringing to the table. Is there a checklist that we can include when we're discussing it so people can follow it on paper? you know, because we can say everything we're doing, but then it doesn't stick in someone's head, especially, you know, an elderly seller. What does everyone do to aid elderly sellers in kind of comprehending all those aspects of a buyer's agency agreement and the purchase and sale agreement? Does anyone have any input?
I've not actually had that issue. But obviously, I mean, one of the things that you wanted, if I don't know that we have an actual checklist, you could go again to bestchoicerealtyhomes.com and
Right.
look for that. But you certainly could create your own if you feel that that's an issue and that's something that you want to include in your presentation. Remember now, we provide listing and buyer presentations for all of our brokers, but you can personalize those. And if that's something that you want to put in at the end, you know, maybe we could all brainstorm together, and if everybody thinks that's a good idea, and have one of those included. But I'm not sure that we do, and I've not ever, quite honestly, I've never used one. I don't know if some of you guys that have been around a while, as long as I have.
But just, you know, you get these older couples or older people, they get home after the appointment, right? They get home and I think the question sometimes is, what did he say? Or oh no, I can't remember this, or oh, let me go to that document. You know, he listed it out, everything he's gonna do, you know, so they have something tangible at home that they can refer to.
Yeah.
I don't know, just an idea.
That's your task, Lee. You can come back next week with a checklist for all of us, and we'll take a look at it.
I'm gonna take that on.
Okay. Okay. I don't know, Barb, Misty, or Willie. I mean, TJ, I don't think we have anything like that on Best Choice Realty Homes. So
I think
I haven't seen anything.
you know, the list of buyers, you know, what the buyer's agent does or what the seller, you know, the list that's on bestchoice.com.
Yeah, that's on. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is a lot of the escrow companies, I was looking at Old Republic recently, and they have closing checklists for buyers and for sellers, and that would help. I in my previous life, I ran a medical equipment store. I was a Medicare expert. I think that that age group in particular, or any of us as we age, as much as they are embracing electronics, I think that piece of paper is really important, that they need to walk out the door. If you see them somewhere else, or if you leave their house, they need something in their hand. They need to be able to refer back to it. And I guess what I would say is I would keep a copy of the packet that you give them. And then you have it to refer to, and be available all the time on the phone, all the time for questions. And it takes a lot of patience, but the fuse can be a little bit shorter when they don't understand. Right. And it's a stressful situation, even if they don't act like it is. If it's stressful when you're 25, imagine what it's like when you're 90.
Right.
Because there's a lot going on that you don't know about. And I have an 89-year-old father. He's absolutely with it. He makes all his own choices. And as much as I try to butt in, he doesn't need me to. And he shares what he wants to share. But as I've aged, I've learned to understand how independent he gets to be. And I don't need to take over his life. I'm really lucky he doesn't have dementia. He's, you know, sharper than me. But it's still a whole process of aging that's different. So if there's kids that can be involved, but that's a whole big issue too, because sometimes you don't necessarily want to get in the middle of that family dynamic. But sometimes, like in your case, Lee, if she really was kind of falling apart, unfortunately, they probably needed to have another family member involved at that point. But you have to respect that she gets to make her own decisions.
Yeah, and you know, I had to call the daughter, and the daughter wasn't, you know, and I said, "Are you sure you want me to help your mom?" Because I mean, I didn't want to get in trouble for I don't know, there's elderly laws and real estate, trying to make her buy, but she really wanted it, and I confirmed it with the daughter, and the message, and the daughter was like, you know what, my mom is hard-headed. She's going to do what she wants to do. She wants to buy this house, help her buy the house. Yeah.
The other thing is, are there powers of attorney out there? I mean, I have a friend whose mom, sold her place, and just the dynamics of 4 kids and mom who, had powers of attorney for the kids for certain things, but not for selling the house. So that's like stepping in a mess too. I didn't get her as a client, which turns out to be a good thing for me, because it would have been, the family's a mess.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I had one issue when I worked with Windermere, excuse me, that we're talking about now. And one of the things that the broker then, that was Tom Huxtable a long time ago, and he had mentioned, he says, when you have these issues, especially with the elderly, because it could be misconstrued that we're trying to take advantage of them because of their age. He had mentioned that a lot of times escrow can really help you out to put something together to kind of give you, like you were saying, Lee, something to kind of go through.
Yeah.
And have like a check off,
Right.
Yeah, because I can remember one of our agents back then, maybe about 16, 17 years ago, they really got ran through the ringer because the family came back and says, well, you took advantage of I think it was the grandmother, and because of her age, so, but Tom had mentioned, he says, let's go to escrow and sit down and talk to them and kind of give them the ideas of what you're talking about. And sometimes they can help you with like a little checkoff sheet of things that are really important that you need to make sure you let that elderly client know.
Got it. Thank you, Willie.
Cool. Anything else, guys? Ready to wrap it up for today? I do have this recorded, so Kyung, if you have any questions, or Lee or Misty couldn't get on early enough, feel free to call me. Lee, you have another question?
You know what? Here's a scenario before you go.
Okay.
A buyer that is adamant on not signing the buyer's agency agreement. That's a red flag. Would you work with that buyer? Adamant, I'm not going to sign it, because all the way in my head is there's a reason they're not going to sign it. There's something in their head saying, I might go just jump ship. What's going on in their head? Would you then step back from working with that buyer?
I think for me, I think it depends. And here's a scenario that I had. And there's nothing wrong with asking if they're just adamant about it. You could just politely say, is there a reason why you're so hesitant about signing this, and see what they say. But I had a buyer, actually, I was one of the, she looked right at me. She says, I'm not signing that. She says, I want the freedom to be able to go where I want if I don't think you're going to do your job, or I'm not happy with your job. And you know what? I had absolute respect for that response. Right. And I kind of smiled inside and I said, I got you, because I knew what I was going to do for her. Right. And to this day, this was, gosh, you guys, this was back in like 2011. I've bought them, I helped them buy a house. I've sold their house. They're in Ohio, and they are friends of mine. And we still laugh about that conversation. So it's you got to do, it's really, to me, it's a case by case basis of who you're working with. We're working with humans, and you're going to have a red flag that goes off and say, there's no way in the world I'm working with this person, and walk away. And I would strongly say that if you've got that red flag going up, leave, because you're going to regret it if you don't. If you've never had a miserable client before, honestly, you don't want one. You don't want one. Yeah. But yeah, I would say that's a case by case, and listen to what they have to say, or listen to their concerns, and in the end, you get to make the decision as to whether you're going to go forward with them or not.
Right.
Not that's the way around.
I'll decide if I'm going to work with you or not. Right.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
All right. Great talk.
Thanks a lot. See y'all later.
Okay, guys.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. For those of you that are in the lead program.
All right. You guys have a good day.
All right, Willie.
Thank you.